light within our hearts, light within our thoughts, light within our words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me today on the show, I have my friend David Slater, who is a spiritual intuitive and spiritual counselor, and the complex topic we wanted to talk about today is balancing aggression and peacefulness. It seems most people, when they hear the word aggression, think only in terms of violence. I would suggest that's too narrow of a definition to be helpful.
I agree.
How would you begin to address the subject?
Well, peacefulness seems to speak mostly to itself, but with aggression, I have found interesting experiences in my own life. I've spent time healing folks, and I've also spent time in the military learning to kill, and seeming to be opposite ends of the spectrum. And I find that to make it a little more closer to the center for a balance, aggression sometimes is a raised voice, and it isn't necessarily emotionally charged. Sometimes people hear things clearer when spoken at a higher decibel, not necessarily with an emotional content to the whole thing, but to aggressively speak something as opposed to passively whispering it. Sometimes is a little clearer heard.
If you're speaking from a very centered place, you would have the volume. I don't know whether conviction is an emotion, though. To say something with conviction.
Mm-hmm.
A sort of a calm, deliberate forcefulness. But it seems to me that when that is invoked, it's generally oriented around relationships or something beyond oneself, rather than only one's own agendas or preferences or values. To me, it's very important not to demonize aggression, nor to put peacefulness on some sort of pedestal.
Yes.
If you put peacefulness on a pedestal, that all that matters is if we're at peace, well, the environment in which I grew up was very peaceful. And even if you went there today, I don't think you would have to worry about your physical safety. Emotionally and psychologically, however, it was hypocritical and adversarial and deeply wounding. I sometimes joke with people that the 11th commandment was, "Thou shalt be polite at all costs." And they did mean at all costs.
Yes.
Didn't matter what it was going to cost you or how much you hurt or how much you lost. It was more important to be peaceful and polite than it was to do what was right, or even to be honest.
Yes.
If you had to lie in order to be polite, that was permissible.
Yes, the typical white lie type of a thing. The protecting,
or even black ones.
Yes.
I didn't want to hurt his or her feelings.
Yes.
Well, it's up to them whether they're going to be hurt or not.
Uh-huh.
It may serve as a wake-up call. It may be disturbing, but disturbing is not necessarily bad. But without accurate information, how are they going to make an intelligent response?
An aggressive, something that's strong, something that is uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
can teach us so much more, even about love, than the Care Bears will teach us about love.
Okay.
So my point being is, that thing that will catch our attention, that thing that will bring us out of complacency. Complacency of politeness is a prime example one, because we've been taught that our emotions are bad or wrong, and so to be angry is a bad emotion. no, anger is an emotion, and
it can be used appropriately or abusively.
And whether either way that has been used, it is a part of what the human being is. We've been installed with an emotion chip, and to say that we're not going to be emotional is like saying I'm going to be a fish and not swim.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing is that we will...
Yeah, the shark that doesn't swim will die.
Yes, exactly. And to be non-emotional when we are by design emotional, we're denying in the most basic of regards of who we are. And oftentimes the only truth we ever have to go off of is what we feel. And the prime example is if you tell me you're sad, I can't say, no, you're not.
And I was saying, you would know this how?
Exactly. So it is a truth. And we have that truth in that moment. And if you are angry, it is a truth. And it is something to embrace. When we deny it, it oftentimes gets built up. To go back to the polite thing, I could tell you a black lie or a white lie, black lie or a white lie to protect you. The thing is...
Well, thinking that you would protect me.
Exactly.
Whether you would really protect me or not is a matter of perspective.
And that's what oftentimes in the ultimate result of that dynamic is that the person gets to hear all of the truths that they were protected from all at once, and it's extremely uncomfortable.
That's a bit overwhelming.
Yes.
To get it all at once instead of in measured steps.
Exactly.
On one hand, aggression is the willingness to stand up for yourself. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I don't like the way I've seen some people use that. Mm-hmm. Because it pushes things in the direction of a conflict-ridden society. Mm-hmm. Kind of like Gandhi's quote. Mahatma Gandhi, who said, living according to the rule of an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind.
And toothless, yes.
You know, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It leaves us blind and toothless.
Yeah.
At some point, we need enough aggression to stand up for ourselves, but enough wisdom to choose a response that is effective but not inherently violent.
Mm-hmm. Another
about not unnecessarily violent.
Mm-hmm. When we oftentimes will personalize it, we have to be right, and we will carry it to the smallest issue. And I found a delightful thing that oftentimes conflicts that human beings will have in a relationship have no basis, no meaning. It's just for the conflict sense of it. And
just for the conflict sense. So they're drawing an adrenaline rush from their involvement in conflict.
Yes, and it's one of the...
You know, I want to feel excited, so I'll do something confrontational, adversarial, and I'll have this adrenaline in my bloodstream, and everything will feel exciting for 5 minutes. And of course, at that point, I would step up as Sister Who, if I thought of it, and say, at what cost?
Yes.
And this is where we come back to saying, what's the balance?
Mm-hmm.
You know, peacefulness, there's something very peaceful about not standing up to a bully. There's something very peaceful about being buried in a cemetery. There's something very peaceful about looking the other way as this or that minority is loaded up in train cars and hauled off to God knows what fate. I cannot believe that is the peacefulness the divine intended.
And how far do we take it? Going along the same lines we've been talking about, when we start realizing what our interaction is about and understand that what the topic is about won't matter in 3 weeks, let alone 3 years or whatever, it can be very peaceful to say, I choose to be happy instead of right. Mm-hmm. In other words, say nothing at all, because sometimes the most loving act is to do nothing at all or to say nothing at all. But
or to recognize that this person is not ready for this insight. I don't have to lie to them, but I also don't have to shove it down their throat if they are simply not willing to accept it.
And people will invest great emotion into the most trivial of matters because it is an emotion. They have so blocked their emotions, they have to have some sort of an emotion.
Well, in a way, they're projecting their living into somebody else's life.
Exactly.
You know, that it's as if, which I don't believe to be the case, making them believe what I believe will somehow give my life meaning and purpose. How?
Exactly. And how do we proselytize, or how does someone, where's the dividing line? Where's the threshold when they have entered my world or believed as I've believed?
Well, granted, there are hundreds of different belief systems in the world. Just to use Christianity as an example for a moment, one example of aggression is proselytizing.
Mm-hmm.
You will believe what I believe, or I will explain to you in no less than 3,000 words how you are going to suffer. Exactly. You know, burn in hell or whatever. On the other side, we have Jesus' demonstration of aggression in the biblical record, going to a temple, finding that that the values being demonstrated there are not spiritual but purely monetary, and he is so offended by this
cheapening,
what's the word? I'm totally blanking on it now at the moment. Desecration.
Yes.
This desecration of sacred space to reduce something multidimensionally spiritual to something as flat and enslaving as economic domination. That they were essentially standing between the people and their God, saying, you will pay us this amount of money or we will not allow you entrance into the divine presence. I'm surprised that God himself didn't show up and knock them out of the way. I would have been thoroughly, it would be like someone I love coming toward me and suddenly a control-oriented person stepping in between us saying, you cannot touch Sister Who until I give you permission. Right. And of course I would basically say, excuse me, who the hell are you?
Yeah. Exactly.
Forgive my bluntness, but that's that's how outraged I would be at somebody meddling in what would have been an exchange of love and compassion.
Exactly. A barker in the temple saying, get right with God, 3 shekels. You know, that's
or
ridiculous.
The sale of indulgences during the Middle Ages.
Right.
You know, indulgences being this word that the dominant church concocted to basically representing that you indulged in something you shouldn't, you pay us the amount of money, we give you the forgiveness for what you indulged in.
Right. It's where aggression definitely comes in handy is when the human condition desecrates the spiritual condition. And
which in a way is saying those points when we subconsciously are at war with ourselves. Aggression becomes absolutely appropriate. I have a friend who was recently diagnosed with cancer. He and his doctor are making the response as aggressive as possible. It's not about peacefulness. It's about aggressively attacking that which could otherwise shorten his life.
Yes. When something gets out of control, it's very wise to assert it. What's also helpful is when you can start off in peacefulness, when nothing is out of balance, so to speak. Peacefulness definitely brings or can help maintain a balance where the aggression doesn't have to go to an extreme to bring it back.
assertive peacefulness at the beginning requires less aggression at the end?
Potentially.
Is that what you're saying?
Again, to go back to the place of I'd rather be happy than right. I may know the correct answer to the question at hand, and no one else in the room does, but I can see that it's easily turning into an argument over something that won't matter 20 minutes, 20 days, 20 years from now. And I can say, oh, I think I'm going to be quiet here and let them have their emotions. I will maintain a peacefulness now.
I spoke with a friend a number of years ago who was in a mountainous situation. There were quite a number of people there. There was ice on the road in the wintertime, and she had a four-wheel drive car and was proceeding very slowly and carefully across the icy roads. But every time she started to move, everybody around her would panic. Oh my God, you're going to get into an accident. Oh my God, you're going to... She was doing fine. There was no problem. But she finally gave up and did it their way, just because every time she put it in gear, everybody would panic. Her environment was not able to allow her to have a different experience than what they expected would happen.
Right.
Is that, in a way, it's crazy. It's
Exactly.
absolutely crazy, but she was not in a situation, she didn't have the people to support her to create openness for something better to happen. And in a similar way, we live within a world where society expects certain things so much that even as intelligent as it might be, if you do something contrary, you have only punishment to look forward to.
And in the case of the driving, get to any number of ways of getting to a peacefulness, because we all know that on an icy road, to drive stressed out is the worst way to go about it.
Probably.
And so...
See, I grew up in Wisconsin, so I had to know how to drive on icy roads early.
Exactly.
You know, and I know, for example, you get one tire on the edge of the road on the gravel, you know, and so those two wheels essentially anchor the car. You know, and you don't go fast, number one. You tap the brake. You know, now they have brakes that supposedly pulse so that you don't have to remember that, for all the people who never learned that, but I learned it. You know, there are ways of dealing with the situation that are peaceful, that are intelligent. But again, we come back to this place of, will the world let me do it? I mean, it's become almost a running gag now. If it makes sense, they probably won't allow you to do it.
Exactly.
Because there are so many things in the world that are not intelligent.
Yeah. Common sense is not so common. That's for darn sure.
Well, it's darn near illegal.
Well, peacefulness and aggression can be kept in a balance, but they can also bring a balance, is my belief. In an aggressive situation where, again, everyone's freaking out because there's ice on the road, a route of peacefulness can bring that aggression back into something more balanced. Also, a peacefulness can be taken into a complacency or politeness that no emotion is engaged, and a sharp shout or something assertive can bring again that place where emotion is engaged in a peacefulness.
And I'm sure it would be very peaceful if my friend who was diagnosed with cancer would simply get his affairs in order, you know, lay quietly in his bed with a candle burning next to the bed and wait. That would be very peaceful. Why give up so early, though, I guess would be my question, because there may be something better available if you're willing to stand up for yourself. And
also, what do other people see when they see someone fighting for life, in a sense? When they see something
possibilities of inspiration.
Exactly, because their life doesn't contain a life or death struggle. It is...
Which makes me wonder if the aggression that's recommendable is that aggression which is specifically steered toward future peace. It's not aggression for aggression's sake.
Exactly.
You know, when Jesus cleansed the temple in that story from the Bible, it was specifically so that peaceful, sacred space could once again be manifest.
Mm-hmm.
So that all the noise of the money changers and the doves and the animals and everything that was there would all go away, and it would be a quiet, serene, spiritually focused place again. That the market would be the market and the sacred space would be the sacred space. So his aggression was aimed at a peaceful outcome.
And
it wasn't self-serving.
And it was so ingrained, it was something that was in day-to-day life, that it took something dramatic for people to say, oh wait, that's not cool, that's not correct. And exactly, can bring that back to a peaceful situation.
It would have been amusing to be there and have him, turn over the tables and go around with the whip of 9 cords and all that, and then stand calmly in the center going, now that I have your attention.
Exactly. And who's to say he didn't do that?
Now, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that he shouted at them. But the terminology was adequate enough. You have done this and so, and he basically tells them the truth. It doesn't necessarily say that he needed to shout it once he had their attention. But if he had said it peacefully initially, no one would have heard him.
In our life, in our society these days, how many things like that are happening that are so commonplace that we've accepted them? And isn't it delightful when someone can say, wait, this is about as wrong as a football bat. Let's not do this. And it's like, but we've always done it. Oh, we've always done it that way.
Always done it that way, and that makes it right.
Yeah, and
well, maybe the reason we've always done it that way is because we didn't know better.
Right.
If now we're going to learn, and we do know better now, let's, instead of agonizing over all the mistakes in the past, let's just start right now and do it right. From where we are now, let's just do it right. Figure out what right is and do it.
Exactly.
Let it not be just an intellectual construct. Let it become daily practice. I recall some political demonstrations over the last few years that got severely hostile responses from authorities in government and law enforcement. And I remember at the time being very angry about that because they were basically offering a wake-up call, and everyone else was, it's like society was this big hand hitting the snooze button.
Exactly. We don't want to hear that.
We don't want to wake up yet. Be quiet. Go away. And they were saying, but it's something important. And they're like, we're hitting the snooze button. We don't want to know about it now. Aggression and peacefulness are about getting from the bed, out of the bed, and finding a way to live peacefully that doesn't basically serve as another sleeping pill.
Right. Peaceful is delightful, but peaceful sleep isn't all that productive, is it?
And it's difficult to demonstrate how it is even alive.
Right.
And I mean, someone who's in a coma might be considered enjoying peaceful sleep. Well, he hasn't woken up in 3 years.
Right.
He slept through the night, and the night before that, and the night before that.
And 3 months before that, and the balance between the two is with most everything in life.
And to be able to see where the ends are, you have to be awake.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And then you find the center.
The other thing, the one final comment I'll make, and then you're welcome to throw in any final thoughts you have as our time is starting to run out here. Somebody was talking to me about balance the other day, and they seemed to be describing the usual drawing of like a playground seesaw, a board with a triangle in the middle, and the board is balanced across it. And I said, the thing you have to remember about having balance is that the what's called the fulcrum, the point where the triangle touches the underside of the board, is not always in the center. Sometimes it's further toward one side or the other, and creating balance is about adding or subtracting weight from one end or the other. You know, if it's way toward one side, you've got to have a much lighter weight there and a much heavier weight here. It's still balanced, though.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to pay attention to all 3 points.
And there's
The point of the fulcrum and each end.
use the seesaw as an example. No two kids are alike.
Yeah.
So you'll want to move that fulcrum for the different kids.
Yeah, or if you have an older kid on one end, you might put 2 younger kids on the other end.
Exactly. Taking into account all the variables.
Mm-hmm.
And again, without judgment. Because this kid's heavier doesn't mean he's a bad kid, good kid, fat kid, skinny kid. He could be even more muscular because of any number of things. But again,
well, and a very muscular person weighs more than a person of the same size who is not, because muscle is more dense and weighs more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But all of which, I guess, to end on a summation kind of note, is maintaining balance involves not just the body, not just the hands and feet, but is seriously involves the mind and every other way of perceiving. We have to take all the information in, process it intelligently, and then act. Occasionally aggressively.